Back. Welcome back to another episode of The Devil's in the Details, a series brought to you by me about my own book, so I could have my own book club for my own book, because I feel like there's a lot going on in it, right? Which means that I want the reader to actually know what I'm saying, and I think this is kind of fun, no? So, that being said, big announcement. I finished the book. I finished it. Like, it is done. It is, you could read it in full if you so choose to do so. It's still on my Patreon. It's under collections, obviously called The Devil's Odyssey. So if you want to check it out, go for it. The link is always in my bio. And that being said, what are the next steps now that she's done? Great question. So my plan for right now is I think I want to do like 3 rounds of editing. I have no idea how long that's going to take me. In theory, in my head, I'd like to say a month. We're still working on figuring out what timelines actually look like, considering I thought I was going to write this book in 9 days, and it took me a month and a half. Still not bad. Still not bad by any means, but definitely not 9 days. So, that being said, I aim to have 3 rounds of editing done within 1 month. Then, after that, it'll be on like Amazon and hopefully like TikTok Shop and like other places like that. That's my ideas as of right now. So if you want to wait for it to be like in paper, you could do that too. But yeah, I'm really excited. Really good stuff. And that being said, let's go over like a general overview of what's happening in the book. This is like the true first episode of like getting into the nitty-gritty of what all of this is about. Because you're probably like, you know, why? So, I found a whiteboard, guys. How exciting. And I think, is this a mirror? I thought this was not a mirror, but apparently it is. So, there's that. Anyways, the bottom line is you have a visual, and we're still going to go through it together, okay? Cool. So, basically what I did is I broke the cycle, the death and rebirth cycle, if you will, down into 4 major steps. Because this whole book is basically about transformation. It's like an internal understanding of like who you are, but part of that means that little bits of you have to die before little bits of you can be rebirthed, right? So, that being said, the 4 stages. You have foundation of struggle, the breaking point, shadows and solitude, and embodiment. Cool. So, foundation of struggle. This is going to happen in all parts of life. And you see that in the book, is that none of these are happening in perfect synchronicity with each other in different areas of my life. You can kind of see mini cycles happen for certain things and larger cycles happen for other things. So, and in each area of my life, like this stage, the foundational struggle stage, is not happening in both like my romantic life at the same time as my work life, at the same time as my family life, like etc. So, what you're going to notice, because this is also for you. The whole point of this book is so that way you can be like, oh my god, she is me. Oh my god, I've been through this. Oh, that's interesting how her mind thought through that. And it's different than mine, because that's why we're special, that's why we're unique, is because we all think differently. We all go through problem solving differently. So, this is basically how I problem solve. So, foundation of struggle. The first element or stage, if you will, of going through transformation, right? So, this is going to sound ironic, but you don't actually know that you are struggling at first in the foundation of struggle. You don't know it. You just kind of know, like, you don't feel like everything's correct. You don't feel like being in reality almost. Like, this is when you start to daydream about certain areas, and that daydream is kind of reflecting back to you, like, oh, something's off. Like, why do I feel the need to go into escapism in order to function and cope with my life instead of actually being present? Why do I not want to be present? That's like the first trigger of it, is like you don't even realize that. You just kind of start doing it, and you have to take a second before you can actually get to the point where you're recognizing, oh, this is now a pattern. This isn't like a one-time thing where I thought about this thing and it left my mind. It's like a repeated situation. Then you're gonna kind of get into this state of mind where you feel like you need control. And what's going to end up happening is this going to come out in really, really weird ways, because you're not actually dealing with the problem. You're just there, respectfully. So this might come in like, if you're having an issue with like a person per se, it might come in overcorrecting them. It might come in villainizing them. It might come in avoiding them. It'll come out in different ways, the way that your brain decides to try to control the situation. Another thing, you might get obsessive. Like, this is kind of where the addiction part of anything comes in, because again, it's another form of escapism. It's another way for you to not be present. If you are fully like thrown into this concept of anything, like, that's what I'm talking about when I say the devil. Devil is attachment to anything and everything, particularly when it is unhealthy. So if you are obsessing about work, if you're obsessing about a certain TV show, if you're obsessing about a person, if you're obsessing about anything, it's probably not healthy. I don't know that obsession is ever healthy. Facts. Another thing that you might see is, especially when it comes to how you interact with people, is constantly trying to outsmart people. It's like a weird scenario, it's a weird situation, but if you're struggling, you're probably trying to weirdly outsmart someone. Just think about it. Just think about it. Let it sit. Let it sink in. Sink in. Then you might feel like you have obligation to do a lot of things, and not really realize that a lot of those obligations are mental traps. Like, you're trying to think so far ahead of what you're supposed to do, or like into what you're supposed to do, that you've now started doing things that no one has asked you to do, because you're trying to just like get ahead of it. When you start to feel like you're just trying to get ahead of it, you're struggling. You're struggling. That's a clue, that's a cue for you to be like, oh, something might be wrong. Something's wrong, right? So another thing, the next step within, because there's many steps within the bigger steps, is knowing that you have a struggle. Once all of these things at the top here, once all of those things have happened, you're gonna start to realize, oh, so I am struggling, and now I'm aware of the fact that I'm struggling. So what does that look like? You might start dissociating. Dissociating. It's like you can kind of start to tell that your memory is going, or like you don't really remember events as well as you used to, because you're not present in them. You're not present. You're dissociating. And you might also be overthinking. Again, staying up here instead of down here. There's a lot of things pertaining to not being here, but that's how you're coping with things. So it might just feel like you're going through the motions, like you're on autopilot. You are in a functional freeze, perhaps. Not always, but perhaps. So that's when you're like aware of the struggle, but like you don't really know per se what the struggle is. It's the first part of like identifying what is wrong, is to know that something is wrong. Then once you're aware that you are actively struggling, you start to recognize different behaviors of like being angry, for example. You start to notice mood swings. You start to notice all of these things about you where you're kind of starting to recognize where there might be a problem. Because usually, if you're ever angry, that's telling you where you didn't set a boundary. That's kind of telling you why you're upset. So it's not always like one thing per se, as in like you might get mad at someone despite the fact that they are not the problem, but it's showing you, okay, why did I get mad at this person? Am I actually mad at them, or do I not have enough time, enough rest to be able to give the proper nurturance to that person? Am I not able to act and function properly in the relationship because of a different area of my life that I am not setting boundaries in? For example, a lot of people, I think this happens, is with work, they're actually upset about what's happening at work. And it's usually because they're not happy with what's happening, either where their time is being put, what they're doing for a job, the people that they're working with. There's something wrong in their work environment, and then that's why they feel like when they get home they have no energy to actually deal with the people who they love the most. And they're like, well, the people that love me the most are the most willing to take shit from me because they know who I am as a person, and they know that this is just a temporary situation, but it's only temporary if you allow it to be temporary, if you make it temporary. If you're not actively doing something about it, then it's not temporary. That is who you are, respectfully. Now, what's going to happen eventually is the bubble is going to burst. This is what we call a tower event. If you've read my book, you know what a tower event is. Now, it's something that completely just crumbles the foundation of something that's happening, right? It usually happens suddenly. It can be an internal shift or an external shift, but the bottom line is it's something that like shakes you awake. That's the whole point of it. So, what does this look like? You get fired, or you quit, you have a breakup from a relationship, you lose a friend, someone dies, you cut someone off, severe health issues. Something along those lines, you get the picture of what I'm saying. So, at that point, you're going to try and suppress your feelings. Because you don't really know what to do when something big and shocking happens. You're just trying to cope with it for a second. You're just trying to like actually process what's happening. But part of that, I think, first is suppressing the feelings and being like, no, it's fine. We're fine. Yeah, we're fine. Then what's usually going to happen is there is some form of shame, because we love to shame ourselves. It's funny because in the book, the Four Agreements, he has some sort of quote that basically says somewhere along the lines is like, humans are the only creatures that feel the need to continuously punish themselves when something goes wrong. Like any other animal just is kind of like, that happened, and then they like move on. Granted, they don't have like the conscious ability to do that probably, but they're also a part of nature, and so why would we not kind of take on that aspect of nature? Like, why would we continue to shame ourselves for something that, like, honestly, was probably an accident most of the time? Hopefully. This is also one of those times where usually at the breaking point, you continue to go into these toxic patterns because, again, you don't really know how to deal with this big life-changing event, right? So that's usually when addictions get bad because, again, it's a coping mechanism. It's just one of those things where it almost highlights the addiction, which is where you're like, oh, I get it. I'm using external things to fulfill my happiness. Oh, that makes sense. And then from there, you're just kind of like, damn, I'm repeatedly self-sabotaging. And like, this is officially rock bottom. Like, I can't go further down than here because I'm already at the bottom. That's what the breaking point is. It's like this culmination of like, oh, something has to change. This is really problematic behavior. So then you go into your shadows and your solitude. This is where you're like, all right, I'm on my journey to getting better in whatever category this may fall in. And so I think this is where you kind of have like an identity crisis. You're like, who am I? What do I value? Where do I want to go in life? Who do I imagine to be there when like I get there? That kind of thing. You're just kind of like, I don't really like this version of me. Like, this is when you're actually fully conscious of what you're doing, your behaviors in that category of your life are like not okay. So usually what this looks like is escaping to some degree. So you have to get out of the mess, which means that you just have to kind of disappear. Like, that might mean you stop reaching out to people, you stop responding to text messages, you go ghost on social media, you might move away, you might do a lot of different things where you're just no longer putting yourself in social situations, especially if this is pertaining to relationships, to get out of it. And a lot of the time, these things are interlinked to some degree within your life, but usually it's like, if you have one person in your life, you might do something with them, like drinking, and then you're like, well, if we take away the drinking, am I still friends with them? Do I still relate to them at all if we take this one thing out of the friendship? Or was it purely based on that bad habit that I was doing to self-sabotage? It's going down the rabbit hole of like, okay, what do I need to remove almost? And as you do this, you start to think deeper about what your true issues are. Personally, Shadows and Solitude season for me was me solo traveling. That was the first time that I like really was able to hear only my thoughts, because I was alone in countries where, yes, they speak English, but like I wasn't going out of my way or having surface level conversations. I would go to a cafe and I would journal, or I would read, or I would just literally sit and rest, like enjoy the vibes. That's kind of what it looks like. I think that's why solo traveling is such a life-changing thing, because it is one of the first times where you're able to just explore life in a different way, but also just hear your own thoughts for once. Like, if you've never lived alone, or, you know, just been fully out of other people's opinions, if you've never done that, you don't know what you stand for. You know what everyone else is telling you to stand for, and like some of it you might be able to truly like sift through what your thoughts are, but a lot of the time it's just you taking on other people's opinions and thoughts. So another huge part of this solitude and shadows is realizing what your childhood issues are and like what your childhood traumas are. So whether that's like a rejection wound, an abandonment wound, etc., that's what this whole shadows and solitude section is about in that journey. It's like when you're really actually starting to get to know yourself and your values for one section of your life. So like, for example, when it comes to romance, you may have one partner and you might learn a lot from that relationship. You guys break up. Cool. You go through a death and rebirth cycle there, and you understand what you liked and what you didn't like about that partner and why. Then you go through a different partner and you realize, all right, this is what I like, this is what I don't like. And hopefully you don't have a type, because otherwise you're just repeating the same patterns. Eventually, what you're supposed to learn is truly what you like and don't like. And if you're dating the same person over and over and over again, you're just going to learn over and over again that you don't like these certain things and you do like these certain things. That is why a type does not work. But lastly, most importantly, is the embodiment section. Because at some point, now that you've released a lot of things, now that you understand your problems, so like you have awareness and you have solutions, but just because you have solutions doesn't mean that the solution works. You have to actually experiment with different solutions before you find out what actually works. So embodiment is part of that experimentation process of figuring out, all right, cool, let's try this embodiment of it and see what happens. And then based on your findings, you're going to go through all of these stages again, right? So what does embodiment look like? It looks like self-discovery. What does it look like now that I don't have these old wounds that are happening here, right? What do you do now versus when you were performing? Because the whole point of this is that you are moving closer and closer to your own personal authenticity. That means that, again, you're not doing anything for anyone else. You're just doing you, and you're attracting in the people that want to kind of like support what you're doing and who you are. So it also goes into, it's a little bit of a rebellion in some senses, just because when you start to change, when you start to do things differently, a lot of the people that you were friends with or like you had relationships with might not get it. They're not going to see the vision, and they're also just going to be like, I don't really like this new version of you. And a lot of the time it's because they liked when you were shrunk. They liked when you were small. It made them really comfortable, and the more you become you, the louder you become. And they don't like that. A lot of the time they don't like that. And that's why you lose so many people as you go up. That's not to say that they won't kind of find their own right and be able to join you in the future. But for the moment, they're kind of just like, ew, why would you do better for yourself and leave me behind? That's so rude of you. That's kind of like the vibes that you get. But it's also really cool because the more you are yourself, the more creative you become, because you're trusting your flow of ideas. You're not thinking, that's a dumb idea. You're like, well, fuck around, find out. Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens when I actually follow my intuition and my ideas. And it's really cool because cool things come out like books. And I think the other thing too is you start to realize how little you care about what people think. And what you can do is use this embodiment and see where in this new embodiment are you like, oh wait, no, I do care what people think about this section of me, because that's going to lead you back to this whole section, these different sections, and you're going to go and you're going to find a different childhood wound, I promise you. Embodiment also looks like forgiveness. Forgiving yourself for a lot of things, but also other people. And it's not always going to feel fair, but you're going to feel better. You're going to feel better. It's part of like accepting imperfection. That's probably a better way of saying forgiveness, is accepting imperfection within yourself and within others, because nobody's perfect. This is also all about reclaiming certain parts of your own autonomy, because as you grow up, as you grow older, a lot of the time, especially as a child, again, this all kind of goes back to childhood wounds, is different things are kind of taken from you where you're like, well, I don't get to really decide that. I don't really get to decide that. Whether you give it to society to decide for you or certain people in your life to decide for you, there are certain things where you're just like, well, I don't create that. But when you go into this embodiment section, you start to realize more and more, no, you quite literally create your whole reality. Your whole reality. You get to choose what it looks like, and if you're not happy with it, it's a reflection of you. And lastly, freedom. Freedom, embodiment. How much can you show up in your fully authentic self? Because that is what freedom is. To be able to think, speak, feel, do everything freely as you naturally do. So that's kind of what this whole book is about to some degree. It's you seeing me go through these different phases of the death and rebirth cycle to transform my life, or just to come to the conclusion of like what I actually care about and what I do not care about, and how to actually find authenticity, fulfillment, and autonomy. So yeah, that being said, the next episodes of Devils in the Details will go a little bit further, more so into specific topics within, because there's quite a few topics to talk about. And I'll use the book as one thing, but I think we're also going to have a couple guests, I'm hoping. I have a few people that I'm talking to right now, so yeah, it'll be fun, it'll be interesting, and I'm really excited, so you should be really excited. And yeah, that's a great big overview of what you might just find within the book. So if you like this, go ahead and follow along. And if you liked the video, feel free to like the video. And if you have anything to add about your own personal transformations, or how you feel about any of this content, feel free to comment below. And of course, click the link in my bio and check out my book, because that's what we're talking about. Okay, love you. Hope you have a great day.